So I'd like to take an opportunity to welcome everyone to our inaugural ZEDEDA Transform conference. Thank you again for joining us today. This session is Digital Transformation Enabled by Edge AI. I want to introduce myself. I will be your chaperone for the event. If you have any questions, please use the chat that's in the right-hand side of your screen. You can also leave questions there throughout the event or throughout the session that we will address in the Q&A at the end. With that, I'd like to introduce our moderator, Leonard Lee, with Next Curve. Take it away.
Thank you. Good morning. Should I start?
Yes, go for it.
Okay. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Leonard Lee, and I'm the founder and managing director of Next Curve, a technology industry research and advisory firm based here in beautiful but slightly muggy San Diego, California. And Jason, love your guitars, brother. A toaster is different from a car. Words to live by. So anyways, I have the distinct honor and pleasure of opening the business thought leadership track of ZEDEDA's inaugural transformation virtual event with a panel discussion on my favorite topic, which is digital transformation enabled by Edge AI. And it is a topic that's very interesting to me, as we at NextCurve, we've just completed a extensive research project on this topic with Intel. And we're coincidentally publishing that paper this week. And by the way, ZEDEDA has a wonderful white paper on Edge. And if you haven't already had a chance to check it out, it's very insightful. I've actually read the whole thing, loved it. So I highly recommend it. And today, I am joined by a distinguished panel of tech and industry experts to talk about Edge AI-enabled digital transformation. And gentlemen, would you please briefly introduce yourselves? Who would like to go first?
I will. This is Doug Harp. I am the managing partner at Momenta Advisory. Momenta is a digital industry advisory investor and executive search firm, and we work with numerous manufacturing, energy, smart spaces, and supply chain logistics companies. And we're invested in about 40 digital innovators and startups. And so I look forward to participating on the panel today. Thank you.
Niranjan, you want to go?
Yeah. Good morning, all. I'm Niranjan here from Samsung. So I have around 20 plus years of experience. I have been working on different areas. Some of the areas which I have worked on is on home networking protocols and middleware software development, web platform and browser development. So currently I'm leading a team which is focused on the Things platform and edge computing area. So we also have this initiative, the open source initiative, where we are extensively focusing and driving the open source initiative that is known as home edge computing. This is under the LF Edge umbrella. Also, I would like to take this opportunity to invite you all and participate in this open source initiative so that we can collaboratively take this forward. And that's it from my side. And I'm looking forward to have a great learning experience from the experts in this panel. Thank you all.
Wonderful. Chase?
Hello, everyone. My name is Chase Hawkins. I'm with Microsoft, and I have been spending the better part of the last 7 years here at Microsoft working on our IoT solutions. Most recently, we have a group of what we call global black belts at Microsoft, the ninjas that drop out under the cover of night and help our enterprise customers and partners develop and deploy IoT solutions. So have been working with across all industries in this IoT and AI space for some time, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion. Thanks, Leonard.
Great. Terry?
Hi, guys. Very glad to be here. My name is Terry Boone. I'm the Technical Sales Director for Spark Cognition. We specialize in cognitive computing analytics in solutions in the safety, security, and reliability, built on top of IT and OT environments. We marry really the historical and real-time sensor information, with best practices in AI to deliver continuous learning systems, right? So AI and the edge, right? They allow for efficient operations, risk mitigation, prescriptive and predictive maintenance solutions that improve.
Wonderful. And last but not least, Robert.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss this really interesting topic. I am the founder and partner in Smart City Works. We are an accelerator and an advisor looking at the built environment infrastructure in smart cities. So we've been looking at lots of different applications. We spend a lot of time with the companies we work with doing customer discovery and understanding where their problem sets are and where technology could help them move to the next level. And thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Thank you. And thanks for the introductions, gentlemen. And to our audience, you can find the detailed profiles of our panelists in the event program for this session. So let's get into it, okay? Let's start off with the most basic of basic questions. What is Edge AI? Which of you gentlemen would like to start off? What is Edge AI?
I'll take it, Leonard. So I think of it at a general level, it's the ability to solve very complex problems at layers below the cloud. We have seen ML and AI and algo really spin up in the cloud due to high performance computing and the ability of and access to low cost compute. And now we're seeing the miniaturization of maybe ML and moving it downstream closer to where the action and the control action is. And, think of time sensitivity, criticality, safety, the types of use cases that you need to start moving closer to the machine, closer to the process.
Anyone would like to add?
I would want to add to this. So as you all know, the cloud computing domain, right? So anything processing on the cloud will incur cost as well as latency. And the concept of Edge AI basically provides a platform, an execution platform for executing all your AI kind of services. So that is a kind of a main key thing. And this is driven by the fact that the hardware, the compute capability and the hardware capability of the edge devices are increasing exponentially. And also, if you see the number of IoT devices which are entering into the user's ecosystem also is humongously increasing. So these two are basically driving many of the AI capabilities onto the edge devices. So that's where Edge AI is going to become popular, and it's already becoming popular, and completely relying on the cloud part of it to extract the data, analyze the data, and then make a real-time kind of decision is going to be not a viable solution. So going forward, Edge AI will be a kind of an important domain to give real-time decisions.
And I'll just kind of add on to that a little bit, right? If you kind of think of how AI really started, right? It was big data, and then we pulled in AI on top of it to make insights on top of that data, right? And you built models, and those models gave you predictability, right? And insights into that data. Well, a natural progression is to move that information or that insights out to the edge devices. You're not necessarily, especially on edge scenarios, especially lower compute standpoints, you're not necessarily going to have, the build and the big and take those big insights, but now you're doing more of a runtime for that edge, for that prediction, for that operation, right? So everybody picks on the real-time driving cars, high speed data, like I said, the latency that does not come back and forth that you just cannot afford for making certain decisions in those types of environments.
And so, if I could just build on what Terry was saying, sorry if I was speaking over you, Robert. It's interesting there's a common thread here as we look at the flexibility in these solutions. I always like to take a step back as I'm talking with customers about this, and you look at the old paradigm between client and server, and then the pendulum just kind of swung back and forth, and then you look at how it has swung to the cloud, back to on-premise. What's really interesting about this to me, and what I'm passionate about, is with Edge AI, you get to leverage kind of the best of both worlds. You get to leverage these great cloud models and these amazing analysis that can be done at scale, and then you can move them back down close to where the action's really happening. So, Terry, you mentioned it's a progress. I do agree with you, it's progress, but it's interesting. It's kind of this pendulum that just keeps swinging back and forth. And the great news is that today there are amazing solutions available for our customers.
So let me just add, because I come from a slightly different focus. You know, we work very closely with companies, mature companies, as well as young companies. And the value, in my mind, starts with what can AI provide? And there's huge efficiencies, de-risking, and so forth. But then the question is, where do you locate the capabilities between the cloud and the device? Some applications, it doesn't matter. You don't need to be right at the device. Other applications, you do. And what the edge does is really facilitate bringing those applications that are critical, that you need to limit latency and you need to save bandwidth, right to the edge. And so things that wouldn't exist otherwise can now exist.
Okay, wonderful. So let's do this. Why don't we build some business context around this topic of edge AI as you gentlemen have defined it. I'd like to ask the panel, what does edge AI mean from a digital transformation perspective? So we have these enterprises that are looking at, quote unquote, digitally transforming themselves. How does edge AI change the game, and what does it mean from a business perspective?
I'll go first again, Leonard.
Okay.
I'm your first volunteer each time.
Yeah, okay. He's the bungee jumper.
Yeah, exactly. I think first is we're going to have this concept of kind of, and we just talked about it, AI at all layers and at the appropriate layers. So, the things that have conventionally been in the cloud, now we're starting to layer down. But really, we're moving toward what we call self-learning. So things that manage their own behaviors and learn from the situations, environments, and conditions that they're living in. And then we look at collaboration across machines, across lines, across processes. So now they can work in real time to collaborate on solving even bigger business problems than just kind of point solutions down vertically, but now they can span horizontally across the use cases, say within a factory or within a supply chain.
Yeah, and Doug, on top of that, right, if you start looking at AI and at the edge and those decisions being made down there, right, just like you said, in the supply chain, they can now inform other devices actually occur, or other edge components out there, and determine the impact, right? So now you have these self-learning, for lack of a better term, systems or plants or operations that are going to be able to continuously learn and operate, right? So when there's an impact to one, right, further downstream, you can either speed up the process or slow it down, right? Today, in most operations, it's either a person, an individual making that decision, or some very simplistic rules. Now you can start understanding that whole complexity, whether it be a supply chain or a process optimization in an oil refinery, et cetera, things like that.
So I would like to add up to this.
Go ahead. I know you have a delay. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we visualize this at a very macro level, I think Robert also was saying about the latency aspect. So if you visualize this at a macro level, right? So edge fundamentally solves the three important problems. One is the latency. It provides a very high responsiveness in comparison to the cloud-based model. And the second important problem it solves is the privacy aspect. So the users have a better control of their data on an edge device rather than in comparison to the cloud-based model. And the third factor it solves is about the cost factor, because anything you process on the cloud or anything you do it on the cloud, the cost factor is very high, and the edge will significantly bring this down. So considering this as a very fundamental context, because I think this is a very well-known area of problem solving of why edge we are going ahead with edge. So considering this as a very fundamental context, edge together combined with AI is going to kind of drive a digital transformation. And many people have different perspective about what this digital transformation is. But the common core across this understanding is that the businesses, how profitably the businesses can utilize their data in solving their objectives. So that is very fundamental in any digital transformation. And these objectives could be about improving your operational efficiency. It could be about providing a differential consumer experience to the users, or it could be it could be about coming up with a fundamental, radically different product or services. So these are some of the objectives which we should be able to solve. And if you see AI, edge AI, this is also going forward. This is becoming a kind of a prerequisite for some of the advanced technologies like autonomous vehicles and mission critical IoT components, or even bringing up the consumer experiences. And edge AI provides a lot of opportunities for people to involve in this, because it provides a faster real-time analytics, and it also provides an ability to do some analysis based on the contextual information. So these are some of the benefits. And if you see net IoT combined with edge AI are jointly going to kind of drive the digital transformation going forward. So this is just my opinion about it.
So
Awesome.
I would build on what Naranja said. I think that's fantastic. And if you take a step back and look at that macro level that he was talking about, business leaders still have the same imperatives that they've always had. They have to think about how to better engage their customers, how to empower their employees, how to transform their products, and how to optimize their operations. And those four elements have historically kind of been done in silos at most companies. And so one of the challenges with digital transformation is, how do you connect these disparate systems and all of these important elements that you need to make your business grow? And through IoT and AI, we're able to actually instrument some of these processes that before there was no way of doing. And so that's what's great about digital transformation is it's not just an operational solution. It's not just a product solution. It's not just an employee solution. It's all of this together, and can really help drive customers along that maturation process of digital transformation.
Okay.
Yeah, this is really interesting. You know, when I look, one of the things we spend a lot of time is looking at buildings, built environment. And as you probably know, most of the buildings being built today are built exactly the way they were 50 years ago. It hasn't changed much. Barely has digitization infected that process. In fact, as you may know, McKinsey a couple years ago did this list of different industries and how they were in digitization. And construction came out 39th out of 40, with 40 being, I think, fishing and camping. So if you go look at how a building is being built, they're not using any of the tools that you guys have all been watching years. But now, if you go look at you go to a job site, there's a whole host of people at that job site doing different things, and they're still not coordinated. But if you can coordinate what they're doing, you can create huge efficiencies for a whole industry that doesn't have any right now.
Anyone else? Is that everyone? Okay. So why don't we move on to the next question here, which is, now that we've talked about what edge AI means for business, what are some of the novel business applications that we imagine will be enabled by edge AI? And maybe if we can talk about what you see near term versus, let's say, longer term in terms of a quote unquote killer app or a really cool app. Who wants the bungee first?
Well, I'll go first so Doug doesn't have to, if that's all right, Doug.
All right.
Perfect.
Bungee.
Yeah, so, you know, it's interesting. Everybody's always looking for the killer app. And I think when it comes to IoT and edge AI, that usually has an industry or a vertical lens, because the same killer app that works really well for mining isn't going to be the same killer app that, as Robert mentioned, worked for the building industry. What the pattern that we're seeing is that there are some commonalities, and I think computer vision on the edge in particular is something that's common to a lot of these killer apps. So Leonard, I'm not trying to evade your question, but it's interesting that they all seem to have this visual analysis element at the edge, whether that's in agriculture and being able to detect toxins at a very high rate as grain silos dump grain past the camera, whether it's on a factory floor, being able to just take a quick snapshot of a kit and make sure that all of the components of that kit are there from a quality assurance standpoint. Worker safety to ensure that customers are wearing helmets or staying out of areas where they shouldn't be. The point I'm trying to make is that common element of computer vision on the edge in particular is something that I think is emerging and will find its way into every one of these killer apps in the industries.
Yeah. I think I would agree with that. I think it's object and image recognition is huge, and you're seeing it come to the edge in real-time manufacturing. I think the other aspect is taking that, and also now the other aspect is the behavioral detection of what's going on around what's being visually recognized. So humans, what are humans and machines and processes doing together? And then really the correlation of the object recognition and the behavioral detection is where you get the ability to do autonomy and use cases where things learn about their environment and really drives this kind of the AGV and autonomous vehicle and concepts into many other use cases. Not to mention within production lines, you have a lot of opportunity for identifying quality issues upstream and taking action before they become issues for yield or productivity or scrap and waste.
Just kind of adding in on that, I think you'll see core themes. So computer vision is an AI theme, right? But how it's applied to each individual industry is going to be different. So, for example, in the nuclear power industry, they might be doing computer vision because they can't sensorize there, right? But it's much easier to put a camera on a robot and then, optimize for, the scenarios where you would to actually do inspections visually, right? Other scenarios, computer vision would be maybe for monitoring of abnormal states, aka fire in an environment where typically there had been a human in there to actually monitor that, aka like welding and ethanol plants, right, on there and identifying risk scenarios in that. So we're seeing a lot of interest on that, especially if you start thinking about scenarios where the edge device is actually the whole device, right? And it's not deploying sensorization, heat, humidity, temperature, things like that you wouldn't necessarily or be either still cost prohibitive or regulatory issues where you cannot drop or instrument those types of components as well. Kind of going back to 50-year-old assets have been out in the field for a long time, right? So vision is going to be a theme. The specific applications will be unique to each organization.
I'd like to add a few points to this. So if we talk about novel business applications, then I would want to segregate that into 4 different verticals. The first vertical would be about smart home. The second vertical could be about smart cities. And the third one could be about industrial IoT. And fourth would be about the smart automation. So these are the different areas where novel business applications can come up. And if you would ask me like which are the top 2 I would select would be about smart home and the smart city. And from the smart home aspect, as I think Terence also and Doug also were telling, the vision intelligence is going to be an important area. One other important area would be about smart automations. So how do we build a smart automation kind of an engine based on the user's preferences, users' behavior pattern, their interaction pattern with all the devices and the sensors across their home, and giving back a meaningful insights back to the user. So that is one important area. For example, if a user enters home, the device's state would automatically change based on his preferences, and also there would be some recommendations giving back to the users in terms of audio or video content which he would be very much interested to view. So that could be one use case. And the other area on the smart city aspect would be about the focus on the vision intelligence, video analytics, and possibly the vision intelligence. So these are all heavily dependent on the face recognition kind of algorithms. And one very good example I can think about is the retail segment, where the face recognition can be effectively utilized to identify the user's profile, who is kind of buying what kind of products, and what is their preferences. And based on this, the retail segment can improve their supply chain management. They can improve their the product refilling kind of scenarios, and thereby avoiding all the bullwhip kind of effect. I think these are some of the broader areas which have very novel opportunities to build some novel use cases.
Okay, Robert, you want to get the final word in?
Sure. When you look at any market or any business, I really think you have to start looking at those value chains and the supply chains and start slicing them down. Because every time you slice it down, you're going to see little activities that could use huge amounts of efficiency. And that means you really got to understand the business. So I'll give you a couple examples of just slicing it right down to a core application. I talked to somebody last week who has started a company. They're doing quite well, automating cranes. Cranes are a complicated business. Who owns them is complicated. But if you could automate the cranes, you would actually improve safety and lower costs. This is a perfect, in my mind, example of a way to use edge AI. You need to have that information immediately. I mean, winds change, weather changes, all sort of external factors. So you need to be able to put that in place quickly. Another one, this is one I would never have thought of, bird migration. When you build something, you need to know the migration patterns of birds. You need to know if the birds are going to come near your building and impair your workers. If you can gather that information and provide that in real time, what is happening, and ultimately, predictably, that could be very helpful to a company or somebody building a building. And the third one is the health one. Right now, we're about to see a launch of mobile MRIs in hospitals. Huge data hogs, huge. And you need that information back really quickly. So I really like to get down to the specific applications and how they improve a particular activity. And those are 3 examples.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, gentlemen. So now what I'd like to do is take it 50,000 feet, bring it back up, the discussion back up to the CEO level. So the CEO of either your company or one of your clients' companies walks in the door and says, hey, I heard about this thing called Edge AI. What is it? And how does it benefit my company? Who wants to bungee first?
I would like to take this first.
Brave man. Go for it.
Yeah. So the benefit aspect, I feel the top 3 benefits are first thing is the latency aspect. So it provides a high kind of a responsiveness. The edge computing provides high responsiveness in comparison to the cloud model. And the second one is about the data privacy. As I said earlier, also users have a better control. The data is much more secured in an edge environment compared to the cloud environment. Third aspect is about the cost factor. So a CEO would be saving more of the cost, and that would go in his pocket. So that is one good thing for him. And to add to this, there are other multiple benefits. So is about the real-time analytics which can happen on the edge devices, and also the ability to analyze some of these data much more rapidly, like contextual kind of informations. So that is also much more provides much more meaningful services which the CEO might try to focus on. I think these are some of the broader level benefits which I feel.
Awesome jump. Who's next? Terry, come on. I know you're ready.
All right, I will jump big time. So I'm gonna say a couple of things that might be a little
we like controversy,
right? I know. So a CEO, right, come in and say AI, right? They don't care about what's in the box, right? They want to know what that outcome is. I mean, that's their day in life, right? And so you have to link that, the edge AI capabilities, to something that's going to impact the business effectively, right? And, that's kind of a generic statement, right? But the reality is you need to understand the processes and the activities going on out at the edge device, or either at the edge device or even the individual out there. What are they doing day in day? What does their work, the day in the life of the individual, and how can we impact that in a more positive way, right? Are there poor decisions being made? You know, they run the machine faster, run the machine slower, right? You know, is it a Thursday, or what is it? You never buy an automobile manufactured on a Monday. You want to buy the one on Thursday, because the one on Friday is one where everybody's getting out of work and they're thinking about their weekend, right? Things like that come into play. All those nuances, right? And you have to understand that and put, for lack of a better term, a digital layer that you can actually inspect and identify that, right? And that's where those use cases will actually impact the business and result in efficiencies, right? So in my previous organization, you know, I said, we can't just sprinkle on the AI fairy dust and hope that something great is going to happen. You have to have an outcome tied to it, right? And that's how you're going to get those insights, is by being aware of how things are being done today, and what that impact can be, and how you can quantify that impact. So it's taking a business approach of, this is a technology, a tool, if you will, and how you're actually going to apply it and impact it, or impact.
Awesome, James Barry. Okay.
I'd like to play off that a little bit, Leonard.
Okay.
I agree with you, Terry, and I would say CEOs look from two perspectives. The first is, or maybe not the first, one is where are dollars leaking off their P&L? So costing things out, getting better yield, quality, productivity, things that are probably happening in their factories or their supply chains. But really, the big win is, where can they apply AI in their products and services to increase their value, increase their market share, and increase their revenue stream. So
they need to improve the AI of those devices to know that that's someone's
I don't think that's me.
panel discussion.
Okay, thank you, Robert.
All right, thanks, Robert.
My answer.
You know what? I think Robert just volunteered to jump next.
I'll finish up. And I do think in that customer experience and applying it and providing that value out of the box. I think, like Terry said, most CEOs don't care what's in the box; they care what comes out of the box. And so providing that out of the box, and the beauty is you can have a win-win. You can drive all the way through the value chain, cost out. So, and ultimately you result in less waste, more environmentally conscious, greener. You know, so it really ties all the way around to their total value proposition.
Okay, so I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, not only will the CEO not care what's in the box, he may not understand what's in the box. They want to know what the impact on their business is. And you're going to find a lot of CEOs who, this level of detail, these deep technologies, will have no clue what works. But they will understand their business processes and how those business processes can be improved to create market share or create more efficiency or lower costs. And, those are going to be the hard questions. I mean, at some point, you'll need to get down to the detail of how you're going to do it and what that means. But the first step is to say, oh, this can do A, B, and C, and this is what will happen to your business as a result of that.
Awesome. Okay, so we'll close out with Chase, who works for the smallest software company in the world, right? I think. Isn't it called Microsoft?
Yeah, I know it's you'll probably be hearing more about us in the coming years.
Where are you guys located?
Yeah. So it turns out Terry's comment wasn't quite as controversial as he thought it was. I'm right in the same vein there. Not only would I recommend this, I've had this conversation with several enterprise CEOs around the world. If they were to ask that question, I would simply tell them that Edge AI is digital plumbing. They don't really care about what it is. They just want to know what the business benefits are. And if you can tie the solutions that you're talking about to one of those imperatives of how to better engage their customers, how to have better products, how to improve efficiency, how to even empower their employees, as long as you're tying to one of those business objectives with the solution, that's where the CEOs become passionate, and they can They can unlock doors for you in your solutions. Otherwise, you're going to be running these crazy science projects that just prove that the technology works. And we've all been doing that for the last several years. I know I'm getting off topic here, Leonard, but one of the things I'm passionate about is actually coaching customers up front. Yes, we can do that, but the question is, should you do that? Which one of these imperatives is that actually going to drive? And if you don't have a clear view of how that solution is going to improve your bottom line or make a better experience for customers or improve health and safety for your customer, for your employees, then don't do it, because you can do it, but it's not going to drive results. You're going to waste your time. You're going to waste your partner's time. And ultimately, you're going to think that it was a failure when it wasn't. The failure was connecting it to business value.
Wow, that is one enlightened CEO. Thank you, gentlemen. That was awesome. So with that, I think we have a little bit of time for Q&A. I don't know, Lisa, are there a couple of questions out there that we might want to have our panel here field? Nothing but compliments about how awesome we are. Congratulations, gentlemen. Great session. Totally awesome. You know what? Unfortunately, I don't have a backup question up my sleeves, but maybe what we can do is really any final recommendations really quickly around the table. How should enterprises get their start in quote unquote edge AI?
Can I touch on one, Leonard, if I may?
Yeah,
it's
please.
the recommendation that I always give to customers as they want to do these solutions. Think big, start small, and then most importantly, you have to think about your partner ecosystem in this. This small little software company that I work for is not capable of doing a full end-to-end solution with all the resources that we have. And I haven't seen a successful project yet in IoT or AI that doesn't involve at least 2 or 3 partners. So the power of an ecosystem and this partner-to-partner connection is super important. And for all of us as part of this community, as we think about going to market and better serving our customers, we need to just acknowledge that we can't do everything, and those partner connections are super important in everything we do.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a solid point on that one, because data is still locked into silos. There's still expertise all the way from, if you want to call it, down to the source, right? If you're in the SCADA systems or the OT protocols, all the way up into the database when you cross those domains, right? I know there's been some discussions, hey, IT and OT are going to disappear. I absolutely agree with that, right? But they're not going to just replace, a Modbus, serial connection with TCP/IP just because it's cool, right? So breaking down those silos, and it also these digital transformations have to come from the top. A bottom up, you're pushing a rock up a hill. It's going to be a long, slow, arduous drudge to get anywhere with it, right? It comes from the top of, this is our strategy for digital transformation. This is how we're going to use it, and here's what impacts we want to have the business, and then map the technologies versus bringing in a technology and saying, this is a technology that's going to solve it.
So I think maybe it's not directly along this line, Leonard, but I do think one area that needs to be thought through is the data trust and privacy. AI really gets us into a new realm of, when we could recognize objects and things and identify them, they can be used for good and for bad purposes. And I do think it really brings us into I think we call it ethical AI now, a new realm of how does it get applied, and how do you put some constraints around how it does get applied, especially, as a company, you have a brand, and you don't want to find out that people are using facial recognition for things that they're not supposed to be using it for. So I do think it enters us into a data trust and privacy realm that we've not seen before.
Plugging trust fabric. So really quickly, we have a minute left. So Robert, Niranjan, quick thoughts, recommendations.
Quick thought recommendation is try to talk in the customer's language and how the customer thinks. They don't care about all these layers and this cloud, the decision makers, you have to talk in what's practical to them and what's meaningful to them. And if you get them overloaded with jargon and technology, you're going to lose the story.
Wonderful. Ranjan, you have the last word.
Yes, so I think a couple of recommendations. One is they have to have a clear problem statement of what solutions they are trying to kind of deploy or give back to the kind of enterprise. That is one kind of a fundamental thing. And then the second one, I think already Chase discussed about, is about the ecosystem partner. So the connect is very important. The fitment always, because there's a rapid change happening every time, and the solution fitment is very important. So that's where they always have to be integrated with the ecosystem. I think these are the two suggestions I have.
Wonderful. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and wisdom on this topic. And I also wanted to thank the team at ZEDEDA for putting this great event together and inviting us to share our thoughts on Edge AI.
Well, it was a pleasure having all of you. Thank you, everyone, for joining.